Wondering what the F has happened to your body and your life? You're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to Season 3 of Transforming 45, where we dive into the incredible stories of how brilliant humans are navigating the midlife squeeze with courage, passion, and a healthy dose of humor. Don't miss out on any of our heart-led episodes. Hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and if you're inspired, share an episode you love with a friend. It means more to me than I can express that you're choosing to spend time here and sharing our message of midlife revolution. So let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I am really excited to welcome Dr. Patricia Timerman Barbosa del Silva, aka Dr. T, a psychotherapist, author, and founder of Advocates to Create. In her book, Why Are We Fighting? She introduces the IAP Model, intention, action, perception, a Google Translate for communication. With over 12 years of experience, she specializes in grief, trauma, and couples therapy, integrating research-backed strategies to improve relationships. She also provides clinical evaluations for immigration cases, combining her mental health expertise with her background in immigration law. We have so many things to talk about. I am so glad you are here today. Everything in your bio is so deeply relevant to what is happening in this midlife squeeze, and I can't wait to get into a number of very specific things. So glad you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. Dr. T, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
Oh my God, that is such a loaded question. Who am I? It's interesting whenever I am doing the first time I'm meeting a client, we call it like the biopsychosocial. And I'm saying like, tell me a little bit about you and how do you identify self? And so like my version is I am Jewish, Brazilian, cisgender, heterosexual female. And I always say like the Jewish culture comes first and the Brazilian comes second because, you know, like our history and our heritage, we had to learn to do that. So yes, I'm very attached to it. But when you think about like, who am I? It's such a gigantic question. I think psychotherapist, I definitely identify with my profession. I love what I do. And what brought me to this version of life? I will say it was not like my life took a detour. When I graduated from NYU up to that point, all I was doing is like medical school. Because again, as a Jewish individual, one of the 3 professions that is sanctioned is that of a medical doctor. My grandpa would guilt trip me so often into it. But I graduated, came back to Miami. I remember actually taking an intro to psych at NYU and an intro to political science. And my major was political science. I said no to psych. And look what I did today, right? And there was something about, I decided to apply for a master's before going to medical school, and something about Barry University's course in mental health and marriage and family therapy. I can't express it any different way. It spoke to me. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. Okay, I'll just do this master's and then I'll go back to going to medical school. After my master's, I started studying for the MCAT, and I decided, you know what? I love the mind. I think I use a lot the body and the mind and the intertwined, experience of both in my sessions when I talk about, I think the mind is the abstract version of our body, right? Our brain contains this abstract universe of the mind that we're still figuring things out. Our hormones talk about our emotions, right? Learning how power posing can impact how we feel confidence because it impacts our hormones and what goes up, what goes down. So I fell in love with the mind, and that brought me to being here with you.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Do you mind if I poke around in the psychotherapist bit for a second?
Go for it.
What is it underneath that role? What is it in you that made you fall in love with it?
It's a good question. I think there's a lot about, all right, so So many thoughts happening. I grew up with my parents are divorced, right? And it was my sister, my middle brother, and myself. My sister's 5 years older, then comes my brother, then me. And then 12 years later came my little brother. But the three of us were always very close. And because my parents got divorced at an early age, my sister became the caretaker for us. And so a lot of our communication is very direct because we learned as kids to just like say what you need to say, don't beat around the bush because, us, that didn't make any sense. And I became very acutely aware that my sister was giving up her childhood for us. And in response, I wanted to make sure that she felt the support. Like I felt very beholden to her for that because like thank you so oh my god, like even us moving here, she was the only one who spoke English. And actually it was just maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I said that to her, and she's like, you did not take my childhood away. Our parents, grandpa, everybody else, all the adults, yeah, but not you. And I also always had like my grandpa always express, if you're blessed to have, you're blessed to give. So I think the combination of all of this has kind of led me into this mental health. And I'm going to say something kind of crazy, but just go with me because I'm a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit silly and cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. In the Matrix, like the first Matrix that came out, I'm aging myself here, but the first Matrix, right? Like you're seeing, like they're seeing all the green stuff, which means like everything that when I see interactions, this is kind of what I see. Right. I'm like, as words come out of one person's mouth and into the other person's ears or their body language, I see what's happening. And I see when it gets like shifted and lost in translation. It's a gift that I don't know where it came from. And which is part of the IAP is me being able to recognize how things were getting lost in translation, what one person meant and how the other person received it, and being able to interject before it goes south.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. So you are like an emotion super perceiver. Those are the words that were coming into me. You're like an emotion and communication super perceiver.
When observing others, right? When it comes
Right.
to ourselves, like I usually do the postvention. I notice after the fact and I'm trying to work on, but with others, it's really easy to see.
Absolutely. It's so much easier with others than it is with ourselves, especially in the moment.
Oh
I
God,
always
yes.
find I can when I'm in reflection, I can see where the communication missed the mark, or I can think of what I actually wanted to say in that moment. But when the moment is happening, I have really struggle with being able
Yeah.
to really like receive what the person is saying and then express what I really want to express in the moment.
I say that like I use the acronym WAKA. With awareness comes action. Even in the book, there's a worksheet called the WAKA worksheet, right? Just a quick example, like description of this worksheet. It talks about like what's something that happened in the past? Like what was your intention, your behavior? What was the intention behind it? How did it get lost in translation? Like what was the outcome? Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently? But the thing about with awareness comes action is that adjustment period. So it goes from I'm aware to I'm aware and I'm catching. So, okay, I'm catching and now I do something after the fact, right? I'm postvention. I'm able to reflect and even be able to go back and be like, oh my God, like now that I see, I apologize, until it goes into intervention, until it goes into prevention, and then it becomes the new normal. So there's like a whole journey we go through. Some people are able to more quickly go through that process. Some people take some time to go through that process.
I think that's so important to be aware of, especially in this time of midlife, especially when we are experiencing perimenopause and menopause, because the way all of our systems, our internal systems, have been communicating with each other is breaking down and becoming very chaotic. And that often results in
Mhm.
the way we communicate with other people around us for lots of reasons. The internal renovation that's happening is very energy expensive. So we don't have the same kind of energy for
Yeah.
sitting in relationship, for reacting in ways that we used to react. And this is super challenging for us, the humans who are experiencing it, but also for all of the people who are around us who are used to us responding in a particular way.
Absolutely. I like what you're saying. It's kind of the new normal.
Right.
I have this activity that I added as a bonus in the book that I call the me in 3D. Actually, in the book I put the me in 3D and the we in 3D. And in the me in 3D is who I was, who I am, and who I want to become. Right. And this is just like part one. There's part one and part two, but you can identify like who I was in general, who I was as a woman, as a man, as a trans, as a, who I
Yeah.
was as a professional, as a parent, right? You can be very specific as a partner, who I was, who I am, and who I want to become. And then I have the acronym MEC: maintain, amplify, and change. So, of the person that I was and I am, who do I want to maintain for the person that I want to be?
Yeah.
What do I want to do more of? And what do I want to change? And when I talk about change, I really want to break it down. Like, where do I need to create the change? What's the easiest place to break this pattern or this behavior? Breaking it down, I think it makes it so much easier than just identifying one thing without breaking it down and not knowing where to begin.
Mhm.
Now, I'll share with you, like, I love the me in 3D. I went through different relationships, of course, before my husband, but one of the last relationships that I had, that was a longer relationship, allowed me to understand who is the partner that I didn't want to become. It was no longer about who is the partner I want to have, but it's who's the partner I want to be. And it helped me identify my boundaries, right? What are the things that I will not allow myself to do again? And sometimes it comes about even in my marriage, right? Expecting that plans that we make are not going to get done. I hated that. Like, when you make a plan and you know it's not going to happen,
Mhm.
I hated that. So whenever I start feeling that again, I let my husband know, hey, I'm getting to that space. I'm going to do it. I would love for you to do it. And he's super respectful of it, whereas the other person wasn't necessarily. But I identified boundaries for myself and with myself by figuring out who I want to be, because they help me get the person that I have now who helps me be my best version of myself.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I really like the me in 3D, that the 3D idea of that, because this is something that I work with women a lot around. One of the main questions people come with is, "Who am I? Who am I?" I don't know. It was the impetus for the question I ask at the beginning of my show because it's sort of it's the water that I swim in every day. Often, people really struggle with knowing where to start. That structure of who was I, who am I, and who do I want to be is really helpful for giving people that place to start.
Yeah.
And I think it's really powerful thinking about both things, right? When we're thinking about who I was, it is both and. What are the parts that I want to bring with me and what parts don't feel good anymore? When I think about, so I was an educator for 20 years, and obviously in the education system, evaluation is a huge part of what we
Yeah.
do. And it bleeds out into not just evaluating children, but I feel like we're evaluating every human around us all the time. And I was just recently back with some friends who are educators, and we were talking about all, different people who are different, doing different roles, and what are the things that are good about them and what are the things that maybe are challenging. And it really struck me about how uncomfortable I am now in those conversations, that I spent so much of my life really evaluating. That's the truth. Evaluating other people and placing my judgment on them. And sitting in that space now makes me so uncomfortable because I
Right.
realize there is so much I did not know about every one of those humans that I was making judgments and decisions about.
Yeah.
And so I know now that that is a piece that doesn't fit me anymore, and I definitely don't wanna bring that with me as to where I am going.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that there aren't other parts. There are lots of parts, and there's pieces of me also that are reaching back to the girl that existed before I was enmeshed in the education system, and there's way more of her that I wanna bring forward and bring with me into where I am going next.
Well, I love that. One other thing. So in the Me in 3D, which by the way, yes, you have it in the book, but in my on my training website, advocatetoCreate.teachable.com, you can find my video on the Me in 3D and the worksheet. But so I told you there are different parts to it. One of them being that part who I want to become, the Mac, and then what are the things and the thoughts and the behavior that sustain the person that I am now versus the person that I want to be. Right? We're going to narrative therapy, identify what's my dominant story, and is that up to date to my person. The other piece of it, the part two, is how do I see myself? How do I believe others see me and how I want to be seen, right? And a lot of the times we want to identify like how I see myself and how I want to be seen. Are they congruent? How I believe other people see me, you won't know unless you ask. The homework I will usually do with my clients is get like 3 to 5 people in your life and ask them like, some like small, sentences. Tell me, how do you see me? But before looking at their answer, I want you to write how you believe they see you and then look at the difference. Like, are they congruent? Is it similar or is it so different? And a lot of the times I notice it's very different. But I love what you were saying, right? We don't necessarily know what's behind people's facade, right? The front that they put and the reason that they put the front. So in going back to the book, I talk about my definition, the way I talk about triggers and defense mechanisms or our perception, right? So the IAP model, it's intention. Only I know the intention behind my actions, and my actions can be verbal, can be nonverbal, right? And my expectations attached to that intention. But perception, it's internal to the receiver or the observer, and I have no control of it. Right? The only thing that is external here is the action itself, and that's what can get lost in translation. And that's because our perceptions are based on our interaction to the world and the world's interactions to us. So if all I see is somebody's facade, I will perceive like social media, right? I'm looking, oh my God, everybody has photos that they are so happy. Everybody's so happy. Why am I so miserable? Because they're not putting photos of when they're miserable, right? They are putting photos of when they're happy. And that makes us feel like, oh, everybody's lawn is so much greener than mine. And I usually say, like, we tend to water our neighbor's lawn as opposed to just say that it's greener on the other side. We tend to water their lawn. If
Right.
we're going to compare ourselves, it's important to do it comprehensively. If I'm going to look at where I'm worse off, where am I better off? But what you were saying is like, now I'm able to see that there's stuff beyond that facade that I don't know. And one of the things that I love about my profession, I think that's the reason that it fits so well, is I have a tendency to give the benefit of the doubt because I'm aware of what I don't know that could influence people's behaviors. So I give the benefit of the doubt naturally.
Yeah, and when we are looking at other people and making those evaluations or judgments or or comparisons, we are also always looking at it through our own lived experience.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
projecting and reflecting all of our own experiences onto someone else and what we see in them. And that's why I thought that exercise that you were talking about before, like, what do I believe other people see in me? And I think that word believe is so important because it's all internal construct, right?
100%. Do you know Gottman? Have you heard of Gottman?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I think one of the last things that I talk about in the book, I incorporate Gottman's work and Chapman's work of the love languages. There's a reason I'm going there. Promise
Mhm.
it will connect in a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in Gottman's study, right, he studied couples for many, many years, and he identified patterns of what he calls the masters and the disasters of relationship. I love the Gottmans. They are amazing.
Yeah. They are.
But they talked about the emotional bank account, right? A negative to a positive interaction is not one to one. You need 5 deposits for every one withdrawal. So in the book, I say, okay, the emotional bank account we're aware of, the currency that we tend to use are love languages. Love languages, words of affirmation, acts of service, touch, gift giving, or receiving and quality time. The IAP is the currency exchange. right? In the worksheet that I have, I'll ask, depending on whatever relationship, you can have love based or non love based. You can use this in your marriage, your relationship to your kids and friends, as well as non love based in your professional relationship. But identifying what is my partner's, let's say, let's start with me. In a couple's relationship, I will write down, how do I define each love language, right? Quality time. What does quality time mean to me? Does it mean going out all the time? Does it mean like Netflix and cooking and just being together? Does it matter if I have my phone when we're together doing something else? Does it not? Gift giving. Am I somebody who likes to receive gifts, or do I like giving gifts but not necessarily receiving it? Once I define mine, I put what is my order of like most valuable currency to least valuable currency within this relationship, because it can change depending on
Mhm.
the relationship. And how do I receive it? Part two, how do I believe, that's that word, my
Mhm.
partner defines each love language? What do I believe is their order, and how do they receive it? And then we actually have the partner define for themselves, how do they define their love language, their order, and how they receive it. Because we believe oftentimes that the way that you're giving me love is the way that you receive it. That's not necessarily the case. My mother-in-law is a great example. She is a gift giver because she likes to see how the other person, like, it's appreciative and know that, oh my God, you thought about me, is not the value of the gift itself, but the
Right.
meaning, the significance. She's not a gift receiver. She receives love through acts of service. So if I give her gifts, she will like it. It's beautiful. It's nice, but it's not the same thing. I'm not a gift receiver. That's not my love language. I mean, I appreciate a gift. I get very awkward with expensive gifts. I much rather like you get me something silly, but I am also like an acts of service and quality time, but most of all, words of affirmation, not from everyone. There are people that I get very awkward with words of affirmation. I rather you don't say anything because I don't want to know what to say back.
Yep.
But with my husband, with some of my friends, for sure.
Yeah. I think that's such a great, even just communication exercise with our partners, right? In that maybe I think it was you when we were talking about this in our pre meeting, where you were saying like quality time for you is staying home and spending time together, but quality time for your partner is going out in the world and doing things. But if
Yeah,
you don't have that communication, because we presume that everyone's definition is the
it's the
same as
same.
ours, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And when we have these conversations, it's so illuminating to realize, oh, so this was not a you and me thing. This was a your perception and my perception about the same thing just were very different. But now that we have some common language to talk about that, we can actually get to each other rather than having this like difference of perception between us.
Yeah, that one was a couple, right, that I was working with. That one, like the two of them are like, oh, we're quality time people. But to one, quality time was going out. So he was like, okay, you're a quality time person. I'm getting reservations, tickets, and all of that. And so hers, like quality time was cooking, being at the house, maybe going out once every 2 weeks. So his quality time efforts were being received as withdrawals as opposed to deposits.
Right.
Yeah. So like you think that you're doing a good thing, you think you're putting a deposit into the emotional bank account, but the complete opposite is happening. And because we're not communicating in an effective manner, it's just getting lost in translation and we're fighting instead of celebrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And think how complicated that is now. So perhaps we've also had like a lifetime's worth of these difference of perceptions, but we found a way to navigate that, right? And then all of a sudden you have one partner who is changing radically. Right? Both what's happening physically, what's happening around our identity, what's happening emotionally, because perimenopause touches every system in our body. Menopause touches every system in our body. And it's been really eye opening for me lately in that I have been having more and more conversations with men, and they want to understand what's happening with their partners because they see this change happening and they are receiving it as my partner isn't interested in me anymore. And I don't I probably do spend a little bit more time thinking through the experience of men because I live in a house of men. A partner and I have 2 young sons who are 18 and 20. So, I probably spend more time thinking about their experiences than others might. Hearing them express that, I just talked about this in another episode, but it's a worthy conversation still. I was at the bank and, um I was opening a business account. The manager came in to talk to me about some technical things that the new person who was helping me with didn't know. He was like, "So tell me a little bit about your business." And so I start telling him, and I see this, like, his face start changing. And suddenly I'm engaged with him in like a 20-minute conversation about what's happening with his wife and what's happening with his in like
Oh, wow.
how to communicate. He had so many questions. He was like, this is what we really need. Like, as men, we also need to know and understand what's happening because we have now all of these layers of complication in how we communicate with each other.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. There are a couple different thoughts coming to my mind. So one of them was you're talking about perimenopause. I remember having conversations with clients about like having the first child versus having the second child, right? And I remember one of them was like after having my first child, I was still interested in intimacy when my husband would come, but I noticed that after my second child, like everything would just like I and I don't want to, so I'm forcing myself, but I'm not liking it. And what I said is like, your body went through a biological trauma, right? Like it changed. And after the first child, some will experience it right away, some will not experience until after like a second. But you need to discover yourself because your husband or your partner is treating you as they've always treated you. But that button is no longer the one to push. Right now,
Mhm.
they're like a new collection of buttons, but you need to figure them out yourself or allow your partner to know, hey, I don't know what I like anymore. I don't know, but I know what I dislike. And I think even going back to that me in 3D, who is the person that I want to be, a lot of the times becomes easier to identify who is the person that I don't want to be, right? Like, so for
Mhm.
me was who's the partner that I don't want to be? Allow me to figure out who's the partner that I do want to be. What are the boundaries that I don't want to break? Allows me to identify what are the boundaries I want to put in place,
Mhm.
right? So you get to figure this out because you're right. It's a shot in the dark. I've been this person for the longest time. And now all of a sudden, I'm not. I'm going to give you the silliest example, but I have a rule in my sessions, which is comes to my mind, comes out through my mouth. I'm going to use the same rule in podcast.
Yes.
I've been Patricia Timerman for 33 years of my life, and I got married. And then it became Patricia Timerman Barbosa da Silva. I love my husband. I love the meaning behind having my husband's last name. But I'm 38, 13, 39. So we've been together, like married now for 6 years, together for 13 plus. Um, but to this day, I'm like, which last name do I give? Right? Like, who am I when I'm writing on paper? So I'm getting more used to in my professional life. Dr. T, my students were like, your name is too long. Can we do Dr. T? I said, yes. Or Dr. Timmerman. In my personal life is Barbosa da Silva, but it took me 6 years to figure this out because just my name shifted my identity a little bit. Can you only imagine biologically now, like
Yeah.
what is going on with me? I don't know. I'm rediscovering myself and the grief in a way of what was as I tap into the potential of what is.
So you have gotten me with this. I was not anticipating having this kind of reaction. And so this year is my 24th wedding anniversary. It
Mazel
was
tov.
thank you. I was 24 when I got married, which means I now am at it. So I was Lisa Galbraith for 24 years. Now I am heading into a time where I will have been Lisa Boat for longer than I was Lisa Galbraith. And at this time where all of these shifts in my identity are happening, and I find myself going back to that girl that existed, it's that there is obviously, I'm holding grief around that, that I will have been a different version of that for longer than I was, but that she was fundamental in the formation
Of
of who I
course.
am now. And she had all of these experiences, both beautiful and painful, that have set this foundation, like this big well that I find myself now going back to. And thank you for that because whew, just being able to articulate it and feeling this lightness
Yeah.
happen. And that's
Oh.
why these conversations are so important because someone with some knowledge and understanding can say something that helps you to connect and reflect on something that's been simmering under the surface and you just it's like when you try to grasp an idea but you just can't quite get the traction on it.
Yeah.
So that's why these conversations are so important.
It's interesting. I have so many people ask me like, why therapy? Like what does it do? And one, what you described here is like is the power of normalization, right? It's understanding when we talk about like there's music we'll listen to that describes exactly what we're trying to say, or books or poems or people are talking. And when we feel normalized, we're no longer alone. Whereas for the longest time, we feel like we're alone. I used to run a group for 10 years for survivors of suicide loss. And the way that I would describe it is we are in a world where it feels we perceive that everybody's fully clothed and I'm naked. So I feel vulnerable. I'm like hiding,
Mhm.
right? When I would see people coming into group is finally a place where everybody is emotionally naked together. So I don't need to hide. And so there's a power in that normalization. And in sessions, it's not only the norm, like having somebody who has that knowledge and the background to be able to help you verbalize it, the normalization of it. And even in my own therapy, because I have a therapist who I
Yeah.
love, my therapist, shout out. Um, but sometimes it's just I listen to myself, and having a platform to speak so freely about things that you usually don't even think about, but you hear yourself. And we use our senses as fact checkers, right? And when it's all inside, we don't know what's real, what isn't. What sometimes, when you go to the doctor because like you have a pain and then you get there and the pain is not necessarily there as much. And you're like, oh my God, this pain is not here. Was it real? Is it real at all? When we talk about depression, we talk about anxiety. Depression is not sadness. Anxiety is not stress, right? For it to be considered depression or anxiety or any other mental health diagnosis, it has to be impair our functioning. When I talk about depression, a way that I describe it is like a invisible 500-pound blanket on top of me. And because it seems like, oh my God, I can't get up to go shower or I can't make the bed. And then I start going, why is it that everybody else can and I can't? That's 1 pound. All those intrusive negative thoughts are pounds that we add to that invisible blanket. And one of depression's biggest allies is isolation, is me thinking that I'm alone, that I'm a burden to everybody. So those intrusive thoughts, they are very seductive. They let us know that no one understands. And the biggest kryptonite to depression is social interaction. So that normalization and knowing, oh my God, you go through this too, this changing name also like impaired your identity. That's how I felt. That's what it was. Oh my God, that connection is so important, and it breaks some of those experiences that depression will tell us. You're like, no, 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 you are not real. So that's what therapy does. That's what groups, peer-to-peer support groups, having a support system that you can speak freely does for our mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I facilitate 2 sessions currently. One is like the fire hose of information about what perimenopause and menopause is. It's
Okay.
like and what we can do to support to help our physical bodies feel better. The second one I was facilitating for the first time, and it is all about identity and moving through the grief of this transition to become
Okay.
to vision forward. So it's, like this entire conversation we've been having. And it was the most powerful thing I have ever experienced was being in this room of women who were all having this conversation about how their identity was shifting and changing and seeing
Yeah.
all of the different ways that people were connecting. And some were connecting around one woman in the group. She said, "I'm so sorry." Like, she just sort of burst into tears and she said, "I'm so sorry. I just got a text from my son. We just found out that he got into university in this place and he's gonna be leaving in September and he's my last child and I'm so proud of him, but I'm also so sad." And to be supported, to watch her be supported by this room of women who said, "Oh gosh, I went through that too, but I didn't ever
Yeah.
feel like I could talk about the sadness of it, that I just had to talk about the excitement of what was happening for my child, but there's so much grief for me in that part of my life changing so significantly." Or
Yeah.
people talking about their relationships. I've had people say, "I got divorced because I didn't know what was happening to me and my body. I didn't know how to talk about it. We didn't know how to talk about it. And now I know that it was actually the symptoms of perimenopause, and I don't really want to be divorced." And watching people say, "Oh, that happened to me too." Like, these moments, absolutely, everything that you're saying, we need to have these moments of connection. And my
Yeah.
wondering here is, when we're dealing with a subject that still is so riddled with shame and grief and pain, how do we support all humans to walk, I guess, to walk through that shame, to be able to talk about the truth of what's really happening?
Again, many thoughts. I was talking with a client who's, going through health things. And a lot of the times, like the idea of me not being the person that I always was and feeling that embarrassment and that shame. And I express like, use it as a badge of honor. You're a survivor, right? It's survivorship. It's hard. So I don't remember if it was in our pre-conversation if we talked about that or not, but like when you go into something new in your life, like you just had a kid and you're the first one of your friends to have a kid. So now you start attending like mommy and me classes. Part of that is because you want to find a group of people that you can connect with, right? It's very similar when we talk about like perimenopause, when we talk about suicide grief, when we talk about grief, like the reason that we recommend for people to attend therapy to figure out themselves or have a peer-to-peer support group is that connection, because we learn that the shame, there are things that are unforsakenly tabooed because of society or religion or culture or whatever it is. And there's so many
Mhm.
different things. But there are those that we input in ourselves, right? And I think that when we have so many people sharing that same information, then we start asking ourselves, like, why am I ashamed of this? Like, why can't I wear this as a badge of honor and be able to say, you know what, instead of I'm perimenopausal, I'm perimenopausal.
Huh.
This is what life looks like. I am here, I am loud, and I'm talking. Right. So
Yes.
I love that you create this platform because it provides empowerment. I think that's the word that I want to use. It is empowering to be able to transform victimization into survivorship and know that grief is part of it. Like the life that was no longer is. And as I figure out the acceptance of what is, right? I am going to go through sadness and happiness and so many different emotions at the same time. I also believe in the power of cursing when we're going through grief.
Oh, yeah.
I I think it's so important. But one last thing that had come to my mind was updating our narrative. Now, again, a silly example of mine, but I started indoor rock climbing a while back. I haven't in a minute, but when we started, I was really scared of heights. And I remember like a year and a half into it, right before COVID hit, I went to the gym again and I'm introducing myself to somebody. We became good friends. And I noticed that in my introduction, I said, oh, yeah, I come here because I'm scared of heights. And I paused. And I think it was the first time that I paused. And I'm like, I was scared of heights. I'm still slightly, but not as much. And it felt like my body heard me because
Uh-huh.
I was doing the auto ballet. And it was the first time, right after having said those things out loud, that I was able to reach up and let my foot come out of like the previous place where it was in without having touched the other one yet, right? So the reaching, like I was able to have an impulse and my rock climbing got so much better. So
Uh-huh.
sometimes we needed to update the narrative that we continue to have in our minds because what we tell ourselves become our reality. Perception is reality. Perception is not truth. Hear what people say,
Uh-huh.
my truth. Truth is so different. There's data and there's my way of looking at the same data, but can be true to me, but it does not mean that if somebody else sees it different, that it is not a true thing. Of course, some people can take it because we have people that are mischievous and whatever. But
Yes.
me, well, let's put that to the side. But I do think that updating our narrative and even being able to like, why is this a shameful thing? Like, who said? Based on
Mhm.
what? Like, let's turn something that is negative into a positive.
Yeah, I really like that idea of updating the narrative because we've written so much about ourselves and who we are in a particular chapter, right? And we think that it's the entire novel. But really, it's that this is who I was in this chapter of life. And now it's time for character development, right? If we're thinking about it through a literary lens and
Yeah,
updating that narrative about who I am that has grown out of who I was is a really beautiful structure, I think, for people to sit with. So listeners, think about what narratives do you have that need to be updated,
yeah,
because that's a really great way of making that shift in perception and mindset.
yeah. If
Yeah.
I'm not wrong, I'm gonna go really quick to take a look. But in the Me in 3D, I have self narrative I would like to maintain, self narrative I would like to amplify, self narrative that I would like to change. Right. And then being able to actually identify. So I have positive affirmation one, positive affirmation two, positive affirmation three. The positive affirmation or mantras are a repetition of the state of mind that I want to have. So I am full of anecdotal examples there. I was a very picky eater. My mom is a very picky eater. So I, being my mom's daughter, did not find the world of vegetables. And I love vegetables so much, but I didn't find the world of vegetables until I left my house. It was the same thing with my sister. But I've always wanted to be somebody who could venture out into eating, but I would often feel judged by people, so I wouldn't. So I wanted to become somebody who could. My immediate mental response or the automatic thought when I would see something new was, "Oh, I want to try this." But I didn't want that to be the response. So I started training myself, and my husband was integral in helping me feel like a safe space, no judgment to try new things. Today, the majority of the time, I notice that my mind, when I see something new, is, do I like it or do I not? Different automatic thought. There still are things that I look at and I'm like, ugh, which tells me, okay, you're not ready for that one yet. But it took a moment for me to shift the automatic thought. And that's what we want to do, right? We want to use our mantras or positive affirmations so often that it becomes our new way of looking at things, the state of mind that we want to have. So, when I mean by like positive affirmation one, two, and three is how do I want to talk to myself or about the relationship if I'm doing the we in 3D, and make sure that I actively repeat it to offset that automatic thought that comes.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It really does. And I think that again, that's such a great mind frame to think through. What is real for me? What isn't? Who was I? Who am I? And who do I want to move forward? So thank you so much for sharing so
Yeah.
much of your wisdom and your tools. And I've been asking people in this world of chaos that we are living in, what is bringing you joy?
My puppy. I love her. I say that my favorite channel is watching my husband and my canine daughter interacting. She pokes my heart. It's insane. I love it so much. It's beautiful to see. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. All of your contact information will be in the show notes.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
folks who are listening, if you want to connect with Dr. T, make sure you check in the show notes and look at all of the different ways that you can connect. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Okay, since this is recording, I'm going to send this to you. I had such an amazing time at your platform. I loved our conversation. I really appreciate your candor, right? And our, I think, genuine, vulnerable space.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of Transforming 45. I hope you feel inspired, empowered, and ready to embrace every facet of your midlife journey. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. These actions make a world of difference in growing our podcast community. Your support helps us reach much more amazing listeners just like you. And don't forget, please share an episode you love with a friend or with your community. Sharing our stories is what helps our community grow. Keep shining your midlife magic, and I'll catch you next week.
Electricast.